So good morning. I'm Rupert Seymour from R3N Consulting, and I've got the pleasure of talking to Richard Watson this morning on the topic of the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on travel. Richard is a futurist speaker, author and scenario thinker, and founder of NowandNext. Earlier this year in the Telegraph newspaper, Greg Dickinson recalls his interview with Richard back in 2018, when amongst other predictions, he predicted that a pandemic would cancel all travel. Morning, Richard. You well?
Rupert, I'm good, thank you.
Good. So to kick off the conversation, how did your prediction come about?
Well, it's been in the air, shall we say, for a very long time. I mean, I've written 5 books and it's featured in 4 of them. It's on a risk radar I did in 2015, I think.
Right.
And it's not just me. I mean, anyone that was seriously looking at extreme risks had this on their radar. Anyone that knows anything about this stuff, I'm talking about medics, would have said it's a matter of when, not if. So yeah, and it's just one of those things that a lot of people have known about, but nobody takes very seriously because of a bias towards the present, because of sort of optimism bias, and there's a whole bunch of other reasons why. I mean, I'm not sure how would you take it more seriously? You stockpile PPE. I don't know what taking it more seriously would have really looked like. So yeah, I mean, it was widely discussed. It featured a number of workshops, but you know, discussing things and doing something about something is a completely different thing.
Yeah, but what was the reaction to your prediction?
I mean, with regard to the piece in the Telegraph, I was just, you know, speculating, essentially, nothing more than that. I quite like taking a counterpoint of view on virtually anything. So if they think it's all brilliant, I will naturally gravitate to sort of a few scenarios that aren't brilliant, just to sort of test the resilience of their thinking. I'm not quite sure what else to say about that, really. I mean, we do. The way we tend to treat the future is we extend the present forward in quite a sort of simplistic, logical, linear manner. And we're doing it right now because, you know, social distancing is going to be forever. We'll never shake hands again. This is actually fraying a bit now, but that was the sort of attitude not so long ago. It's going to be ages till anyone gets on a train, or sorry, a plane. You know, we're projecting the dystopia and the current unease forward, whereas that's not necessarily what's going to happen. It's a scenario, but I think there are plenty of others.
Yeah. So with the sort of current pandemic and the effects on sort of travel, what do you think the most impactful aspect's been then?
Well, it's clearly just shut everything down. I mean, I think that the most impactful aspects are, I guess, work, particularly people going to an office, and travel. I mean, you know, clearly, I mean, airlines have always been seen as the way this thing gets spread around. So they're going to be one of the first things that get shut. Although it's beyond me, the UK government position on this, why you'd have thousands, tens of thousands of people entering the UK when the pandemic was raging. And then when it's sort of potentially petering out, we suddenly impose a quarantine. That's completely beyond me. I don't understand that. And if that's their model, well, I would suggest their model's wrong. So yeah, I mean, that is one of the first things you do, is you would shut that down very, very quickly. So they have suffered very, very badly. But I think it's going to, as I said in the Telegraph piece, I think that will bounce back. I think people are wrong about how quickly that will come back.
And then obviously the current climate of sort of re-travel. You know, what are your views on the sort of face masks and the way
that's I mean, it's a cultural thing to some extent. I mean, if you get on planes in Japan, anyone with a cold wearing a face mask, but nobody in the UK before this would have thought of that. It was sort of culturally a very odd thing to do. They're definitely here. They will linger around for a very long time. There may be residual effects, whereas if you're not feeling very well, you carry on wearing them. But if you try, you know, it's one thing wearing them on a flight to Paris. Wearing one on a flight to Sydney is a different ball game. I think it's fairly inevitable that in the very short term there will be increased health checks, particularly remote temperature reading. And I remember, I'm so old, I can remember this from SARS before in Asia. You couldn't get on planes without temperature checks. I think we'll have that. I'm not hugely a fan of the idea of health passports, in the sense that you could be clean one minute and not clean the next. So they don't necessarily prove a damn thing. I think random testing is quite good. I think if you've got people coming from a country that's high risk, then ubiquitous testing isn't necessarily a bad thing. The sort of sci-fi dystopia is obviously we have people that are tagged permanently, either by a chip in their arm or wearing some kind of bracelet, which I think Singapore is looking at the moment. So you don't rely on with their smartphones.
And I suppose technology then will have a huge impact, because whether you've got your phone with you and or a wristband, it will just completely interlink. So the big data piece, I suppose, is quite interesting.
I know hotels in Sydney right now that will not let you in unless you've got an app on your phone or you're prepared to give them your name and address.
Yeah, so you just show. Yeah.
Now, what does that mean? Well, I don't know, but one possibility is we're going to think twice before we travel. So am I going to go through all Java just to fly to southern Spain for a week? Maybe on a crowded plane, maybe not. But going somewhere for longer, maybe that becomes more the thing.
I suppose the piece about local and global is two sort of slightly different streams in a way.
It's local in the sense, I think a lot of people just won't go away. They'll holiday at home. I mean, the people with caravans sitting in their front driveways are looking rather smug at the moment. The Cornwall book to Kingdom Come, and places like America are sport for choice in terms of local destinations. So I think this I wouldn't say the end of, but it's going to erode the appeal of mass tourism with people crammed on jets to fly 2 hours.
And then the impact on economies as well. I mean, the travel economy, especially in Europe, but obviously globally, is impacted dramatically.
But I mean, the attitudes are changing very fast. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, people thought anyone getting on a plane was absolutely insane. I mean, I will get on a plane when I can and when I think it's safe to do so, but I will not be jumping on an EasyJet flight anytime soon. I will make sure I'm reasonably distanced, and I'll make sure I really want to go there. And equally with business travel, with the whole of Zoom, we're not going to get rid of people getting on planes to go and visit people, but we're going to make people think more about it, because sometimes you do still need to go.
Yeah. So having looked at the model, you've got a very detailed sort of model covering sort of travel, and I've seen there's sort of 5 key hubs, whether that's economic, destinations, behavioral, technology, and environment. So how do you devise this model? And if you could expand on the hubs, that'd be great.
It just popped into my head. I was trying to look at some sort of vague summary of a report that I'd written with somebody. They seemed like obvious headings, and the whole thing, most people probably won't know what we're talking about, so I should explain. It looks like an airline route map. So you have flights, if you like, or you have themes coming out of hubs. So the behavioral hub has one of the themes that comes out of that is the sort of need for escape, a rather playful one, which is the mental health mini break. Actually, mini breaks, that's another question. Would you go for 2 or 3? I don't think so. I think you might want to. The short breaks are questionable, although again, I think we've got very strong needs and very short memories. I mean, a lot of people are questioning whether we'll ever go to a city for tourism purposes again. Well, I think, of course, you would.
But then there's the whole piece about memories, isn't it? Through travel, or through those experiences, how do you then generate those new memories in this, whatever you want to call it, new world, new normal?
Again, I'm cynical. We weren't supposed to be getting on flights for business purposes because of teleconferencing. Well, that proved not to be true. What was I going to say? Sorry, I've lost my
so the 5 hubs of the model that you sort of had around travel, and just expanding on each of those pieces.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's an economic hub, which I suppose there's a big question mark about airline consolidation there. Just have less airlines in the future, maybe bigger ones. There's some interesting thoughts to be had there about how an airline 1 minute can be making loads of money, paying its people a lot of money, and you've got cash coming out of their ears, and the next minute they're asking for government help. If we make travel more difficult or more expensive, that presumably would restrain it, and there'd be less people going, which would have all kinds of consequences. I mean, it could be ultimately, I don't really believe this, but it could be that we go back to where we started. We'll go back to travel as, you do the grand tour. It's the pursuit of the very wealthy, and everyone just sort of stays at home and goes to Blackpool or something. The technology hub obviously is primarily around screening. I should mention that this hub was written in 2010, looking at 2020. And one thing actually that's not on the hub is the pandemic thing. Actually, it was quite funny. We did this report for a UK travel company who will remain nameless, who said, we'd like you to look at the future of travel, but you're not allowed to mention climate change, terrorism, like we didn't
virus pandemic. Yeah,
that's like the pandemic idea passed them, but you can be pretty damn certain they'd have vetoed that one. I mean, the other sort of bits are in the technology hub, which are much more futury. I mean, I think the idea of a passenger drone, which is pretty much taking off in China right now. So a very large drone with you sitting on it and nobody else there, no pilot. If you want to self-isolate, I mean, that's one way to get somewhere in terms of a short hop.
Yeah.
You get me one in a hurry. You know, pilotless planes with no crew. I mean, these are all possibilities, but you've got to overlay the psychology, I think, over the technology. I just think getting through an airport is going to be a lot more of an ordeal for most people going forward. I mean, the destinations hub we talked about, I think we'll see in the shorter term, we'll see a lot more people holidaying at home, local travel. I think, funnily enough, I mean, I think the need to travel is deep. And I think the need to travel after this will be very deep indeed, because I think, I mean, you go on holiday normally a lot of the time just to get away from things. Well, boy, do we need to get away from this. So,
break the routine and break the monotony, so to speak.
Break the monotony, absolutely. Now, whether people want to sort of sit next to 1,000 people around a Spanish pool, I don't know. I mean, I think what's happened will question the model of very large hotels. I think there might be a shift towards much smaller hotels. We're going to see them talking about how clean they are and practice deep cleaning techniques and all the rest of it. I think remote destinations are looking extremely good. I mean, I joked in a book I wrote in 2006 about places like New Zealand becoming really sought after because they, you know, at the time they were sort of seen as the middle of nowhere, but that will gradually become their exact appeal. They're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, and actually the way they've reacted to coronavirus and their processes and procedures have been amazing. I mean, I know it's a long way off from where we are in Sussex, but
I mean, also on the destinations hub, I mean, cruise ships to my mind look really iffy. Lots of relatively old people crammed together in a small place, and you cannot get off. That doesn't hold any appeal to me whatsoever. I mean, the environmental hub is a tricky one. I guess this will be in the pressure not to travel because of the environment will now have some other arguments alongside it. So there could be more pressure not to travel potentially. I mean, we can solve that technologically. I mean, we can do hybrid electric planes. You know, we could use sort of algal biodiesel and all the rest of it. Although it is problematic using non-standard jet fuel for various reasons. I mean, trains are interesting in this context. The growth of high-speed point-to-point trains. You haven't. I mean, I would never fly to Paris. Why would you do that? I mean, you get the train. It's so easy.
The ease of travel, I suppose, now, the sort of ease of, you know, you don't want to have the processes and procedures, and you want to make it as simple as possible to get from A to B.
So this was just it was really just a sort of summation of what was in the report, this route.
Well, it's really interesting, really interesting. You know, I'll share that when we, you know, launch this as well. But any sort of final thoughts, any sort of the insight to the future of travel? And
well, a lot depends on, you know, are we going to get a second wave? Because that would fundamentally change things. And also, when would we get a second wave? I'm currently skeptical. I think we're either not going to get one, or it'll be short and sharp, or it'll be lots of small little waves that are regional. It won't be a big second wave, but I could be wrong on that. So if we don't get a second wave, I think that would tend to push us towards normality rather quickly. What's going to happen to the economy? We haven't talked about that at all. Again, I'm pretty optimistic about that. I think it'll bounce back pretty quickly, but if it doesn't, that's going to massively impact on travel and tourism. If mass unemployment and all that kind of stuff. My best guess is, I think, as I said in the Telegraph piece a few years ago, I think it'll bounce back quite quickly. I think there's a deep need for people to get away. I think people have very short memories. And I wouldn't say it'll get back to normal, but it'll get back to something adjacent to normal quite quickly. And there is a sort of nervousness. I mean, I would be a bit nervous about getting on a plane right now, but we will gain trust in incremental steps, and we'll sort of realize, well, actually, yes, everyone else seems to think it's okay. I think it's okay. And we'll go somewhere and we'll be okay, and then we'll sort of come back to our normal behavior. But it wouldn't take much to sort of push us all backwards again. And also, you know, it's not a sort of simple thing in the sense of everyone's in the same position. Countries are at different points. Countries have different cultures, different attitudes towards technology. So it'll be interesting to see literally how this pans out. And Britain is to some extent alone from the rest of Europe now. So I don't quite know where that's going to go.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Richard. Good conversation, good chat, good insight as well. And I look forward to our next conversation. Just also like to thank our sponsor, Lisa Bullen from Social Media Sussex, for their support as well. Richard, thanks a lot for your time, and we'll catch up soon.
Ciao. Thanks.